Mobile layouts are the next design piece that are often done in Photoshop. In fact, there are some free tools built directly in that will aid you in creating buttons. What we're going to look at is a layout that I've built here. And before I start, I'm going to choose View, Show, and Grid. Now the reason I'm turning on a grid is so that I can divide my layout into even chunks. When you're looking for inspiration or when you're deciding how to design an app, go to your favorite apps and figure out how they work. If I come down to Mini Bridge, on my iPhone I took a couple screenshots of some of my favorite apps. And the grid is a little distracting, so I'll hit Command H or Control H, and I'll choose to hide extras for the moment. Here is the bottom navigation from Meetup.com's app. Here is the bottom navigation, and I'll hit Command H or Control H to hide the grid again. This is the bottom navigation from GoDaddy.com, which I use for my email. When you do your layouts, you want to decide, are you going to have 2 buttons along the bottom, 3, 4. You really don't want to go much past 4 or 5 because it starts to get too busy. And I even know companies today that are starting to design for mobile first. Mobile forces the client to pick what is most important, what your customer cannot live without. Once that's decided upon, you can build your app, then your entire website can grow out from there. But we all know if you have a mobile or tablet device, which apps are designed well and are easy to navigate, and which ones we just bail on and jump out to their website because we can't find what we're looking for. So, having said all of that, I will come back to this beginning document, and I'm going to change my preferences. Now on Windows, your preferences are all under the Edit menu. On the Mac, they're under Photoshop Preferences. And in this case, I want Guides, Grid, and Slices. On Windows, that would be Edit, Preferences, Guides, Grid, and Slices. And I'll scoot this a little off my screen so you could see what's happening. Instead of a grid line every 1 inch, I will do 25%. Then I see 4 darker gray guides. The subdivisions are the dotted lighter gray guides, so I'm going to make that 1, and now I have a perfect grid to do top navigation or bottom navigation, and this grid will show up in any image. So I'll click OK. You can, of course, hide it with Command H or Control H to hide, or View, and that's considered an extra. Now, on to button layout. In order to create buttons, Photoshop has a custom shape tool that's been there for many versions. In fact, they're now called vector layers, but they were introduced a few versions ago. Once I go to the Custom Shape tool, I can see on my options bar across the top the shape that I'd like to select. And you may say, oh, there's only a few here. So if you want to email a friend your dinner choice, I could choose the envelope. I could come down to the grid and click and drag, holding down Shift if I want to keep it proportional. In this case, the fill is black on black, so I will change my fill color to white, and now that envelope is more visible. I'll use my Move tool, and I'll name this Mail, because that's what the button is intended to do. And you could slide this over. I often like to nudge it with my arrow keys, but I'll use some alignment features to make sure those buttons line up. And as you saw here, many of the buttons will have different colors, so those would be your overstates or the area that's selected. In fact, I didn't think about this until recently, but on a phone or tablet device, you don't really have an overstate. You're not using a mouse. With your finger, you point and touch, but there's no hover for it to read. So rollovers in web design are going away, or the way of the dodo bird. Not completely. Some people are still deciding to write in a good web experience and the same in their app, But most people know today what areas are hotspots, and if you touch them with your finger or click them with your mouse, that it's going to go somewhere. This will just give them an indication that they're currently at home. But let's come back to the buttons. So if you look at the Custom Shape tool, this may seem like a small amount of choices. However, I can hit this panel menu, and instead of choosing one or two groups at a time, I can choose all. And I always remember append adds this to the end. So I click append, and now I can stretch this and get a large listing of the built-in shapes that come with Photoshop. So in this fictitious app that I've built, Feed Me Siri, we have a few ideas that we're going to incorporate into it. One would be email your friend, your dinner choice. Some others are maybe you want a treat for your dog or cat. So you could select the dog button, hold down Shift and drag until you're happy with the scale. These aren't exactly 100% ratio, so you use your best judgment here. And when I've drawn that shape, I'll check over in my layers panel. It looks like that shape did go to the mail layer. Let's confirm. The eye icon will hide or show it. So what I'm going to do is undo the second custom shape and build a new layer named dog. Now I'm still on the dog shape, and I will shift drag to place that dog. It defaults back to the black fill, so I'll switch that to white, and now I know I have that on the dog layer. You could see how I would proceed with this, but let's just do two others quickly. So we have a cat that we're going to feed, and before I draw the shape, layer, new layer, cat. I will shift drag to make a roughly proportional cat. I'll change the fill color to white, and I'll finish off with another creature. You could look through the list. In fact, another idea here is your favorite meals when Feed Me Siri suggests what you should have for dinner. So I'll go to the heart, layer, new layer, name this favorites, and shift drag. If you don't hold down shift, it doesn't keep it in proportion. So if I undo, you may get a wide heart as an example. I usually like the shift and try to keep it in proportion. I'll make this color white. And now with the four of these created, I can shift click to select them all. And through my move tool, I can align all the top edges, which in this case, because they're different shapes, doesn't look that good. So I'll choose to align their vertical centers. Here, align vertical centers. And then I could use my arrow key to nudge them all up or down until they fit. You will have some spacing and scaling to do until you're completely happy. But the last thing I will do is proportionally distance these. So if I mouse over, I can distribute the horizontal centers. In fact, if I click on the favorites and I arrow over twice with my left arrow key on my keyboard, then I click on mail and arrow over a few times. Now it will distribute the difference between all four from where this sits and the heart sits. In fact, the heart, I'm going to go back visually just one or two. So now I will shift click to select all four and again distribute the horizontal centers so the dog and the cat are proportionally centered. I think finally the last three I built are a little bit big. So I will choose Edit, Free Transform, hold down Shift to scale them down a bit, and grab the corner and pull in, press Return or Enter to accept it, and go to my favorites, which is the heart, and visually position that. There are a few other tricks for this. Sometimes I will build a rectangle to my grid line, and then align the shape to that. That's also good for the active part of the app you're on. As you saw here, it can be ghosted or dimmed to let you know you're there. So that's a handy method as well. But to keep this video short enough, I will go ahead and select all four and finish by choosing Distribute Horizontal Centers. And now I'm happy with the balance. I could hit Command H to hide the edges. I could nudge these up or down with simply my arrow keys on the keyboard. But this is very simple, very intro button creation using the built-in vector shapes that ship with Photoshop and the last several versions of Photoshop. Take a look at your favorite app and try to do some mock-ups like this on your own. It's great practice for learning how to use the shape tools and aligning objects in Photoshop.